Morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our daily meditation. My name is Miles Kessler. I'm coming to you today from Tel Aviv, and I'm happy to be here with everybody. This will be the last day of this daily meditations this week. Usually we'd go through to Friday, but I'm getting on an airplane tomorrow. Well, I'm supposed to get on an airplane tomorrow. We'll see if that happens, but that's another story. I'm getting on the airplane tomorrow morning, actually, around 6. And so I won't be able to do the morning session this week. Tomorrow. And George and I were discussing it. And rather than find a substitute, since it's already August, the decision was made just to make this a short week. So this will be our last day together. I'll be back in October. You're all very welcome to come and be with me then. Just a few upfront announcements. First, this is Sangha Live offers these daily meditations free of charge through the generosity of its leading teachers or guiding teachers and amazing staff and who do a lot of work, I can tell you, and the visiting teachers. And if you want to help support, they offer they make this Dharma space available for you. And the teachers offer it open-handed for free. And if you want to support that, then there's an opportunity to donate. As always, there's an opportunity to donate. I put the link there. Any donations will be gratefully received and used for the benefit of all. And what else did I want to say? Oh, yeah, right. So I won't see you guys until October again. But if anybody wants to follow me over on Instagram, Miles Kessler, I post pretty regularly over there, mostly Dharma stuff. So just give me a follow over there. Also on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook. I post there as well. So that's a way for us to kind of keep in touch. And also, I think in September, I'm going to be teaching a Buddhist Psychology Day workshop, like a 3-hour workshop. So if anybody's interested in that, you can go over to my website. I'll put the link at the end of the session today. Today's session, what we will do is I'll give a talk on today's topic. Then we'll sit for about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, and there'll be space for Q&A at the end. I have a few questions from yesterday and left over from Monday, one from Adit, another from Jane and Heidi. So I'll try to work those in and take any live questions we have. And it's going to be an interesting topic today. So I'm sure there will be lots of questions. Okay? Announcements finished. Okay, so welcome to our session today. This is the fourth of a four-day daily meditation on the umbrella topic of cutting through to ultimate reality. Ultimate reality being seeing the Dhammas, the ultimate reality. Could be many things, but these are universal principles and or absolute truths. For our meditation practice, let's kind of limit it to the 3 universal characteristics, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Vipassana means the repeated contemplation of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. It's called insight meditation, but it actually, a more accurate translation is anupassana, is contemplation, repeated contemplation. V, meaning the 3 universal characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. That's the repeated observation of those 3 characteristics through the sensations, through the breath, through the feelings, through the perceptions, through the senses, through the mind. Those 3 universal characteristics, everything's conditioned by those 3 universal characteristics. 3 universal characteristics of anicca, impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta. The repeated contemplation of that is what brings about, which purifies the mind and brings about a transformation in consciousness. It's literally a rewiring of the brain. To cut through to that, to see that, we must have the 5 controlling faculties must be in balance, accessed, strengthened or cultivated, and balanced. Those are the 5 controlling faculties of Sadhavidya Sati Samadhi Penya, faith, energetic effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. So every day I'm kind of saying the same thing. So if you've heard it, just let it come in more. Like my teacher used to say, if you've already heard this, hear it again. Now, if you've already heard this and you already know it, hear it again and know it more. These are universal characteristics. These things the profundity of understanding never stops. It's deep. So to develop those 5 controlling faculties, which really kind of determine the progress in our practice, we have these 9 practices to help sharpen these controlling faculties. And I spoke about 3 of them already this week. Today I'll speak about 1 more, but I'll just go over the 9. This is from the Sayadaw Pandita's book, In This Very Life. This is my main teacher, and I highly recommend. It's the late Sayadaw Pandita. So the first practice was the practice of paying attention to impermanence. The second was the practice of care and respect. The third, or practicing with care and respect. The third is practicing with an unbroken continuity, in this case of mindfulness. The fourth one is practicing with supportive conditions. This is what we're going to look at today, and specifically a teacher. The fifth one was reapplying helpful conditions from the past. The sixth one was cultivating the 7 factors of awakening, the enlightenment factors. The 7th, which we spoke about yesterday, was cultivating courageous effort, not just to be strong, but also to be vulnerable. The 8th is practicing with patience and perseverance. And the 9th is an unwavering commitment to the Dhamma. Okay? And today we're going to talk about the supportive conditions. And there's, Sangha Life is a supportive condition for developing these controlling faculties, supporting all of us to cut through to ultimate reality. You might have your online Sangha friends and your offline Sangha friends. You might have Sangha brothers and sisters, spiritual friends. You might have just friends. You might have family members that are supportive in that way. You might have mantras that support you in your practice. You might burn incense and maybe a crystal or 2 on your altar, or flowers, or some calligraphy. Or there's so many different things that can be supportive. And by all means, use this. Of course, none of those will make us enlightened. It's only the practice of mindfulness that leads to the purification of the mind, realization of Nibbana, path and fruition consciousness, and some level of awakening, whatever that might be. But one supportive conditions is, of course, teachers or guides. And in the Pali language, a teacher is called a Kalyana Mitta. A Kalyana Mitta is translated as a spiritual friend, somebody who is further down the path than we happen to be. Number 1. Number 2, somebody who has not just accessed the Dhamma, not just accessed the absolute perspective, but they also enjoy the fruit of it. That it continues to manifest through them in one way or the more or less. And there's something about a relationship with somebody like that is very, very precious to the human experience. Now, of course, we're talking about meditation here, but you could also say the same thing for a therapist. You could also say the same thing for a priest or a rabbi or an imam or whatever, a religious leader. We could also say we could say the same thing for maybe a wise uncle, or just an older man or woman who has an impact in our life. Could be a grandparent, could even be a parent. But what makes this relationship so special, the teacher-student relationship, by the way, I actually did forget to mention this, but this came from a question from Olivia Wickstrom on Monday. She said she's a beginner meditator, and she was wanting to know How do you find a teacher? How did I find a teacher, and how do you find a teacher? So that's why I thought this would be a good topic. And it's these types of people that we meet in our lives that the relationship is very special, very precious. It's more precious than just an ordinary relationship, whether it's family, friends, or strangers, whatever, or just people we know. The reason it's precious is because our Dharma practice is nothing less than taking on the responsibility of transforming our karma. Let me say that again. Our Dharma practice is nothing less than taking on the responsibility of transforming our karma. Karma, things that we've done in the past, will bear fruit in the future. Some bad things we did in the past or unskillful things will bear fruit in the future. Skillful things we did in the past will bear fruit in the future. That's karma. Conscious things that we do in the present will bear conscious fruit in the future. Might be the next moment, might be next year, might be in 10 years. A teacher-student relationship or having a relationship with a Kalyana Mitta helps us on that path, helps us transform our karma. Therefore, it's very important for us to find such people in our lives. Everybody's different. What that means is going to be probably different for everybody else. But also for a teacher, it needs to be understood that it is understood that the responsibility is sacred because we're helping others transform their karma. In one sense, we're kind of taking on their karma a little bit, helping them, supporting them in that. And that relationship needs to be as pure as possible. So the Buddha spoke about this. And he was asked, hey, how do I find a teacher? And he said, well, look, there are many types of teachers. Many teachers teach in different ways. Some teachers will teach more, but there's going to be more challenging teachers, with the kind of ragged truth-telling, the tough love. This was one of them. Sadhu Pandita was a very masculine teacher, warrior teacher. And there's going to be teachers that teach that are all support, that they're just one big blanket of loving support. Fact is, in our practice, your practice and my practice, we need both of those. Sometimes we need to be challenged. Other times we need to be supportive. And who knows? It's difficult for you and I to know if we need to be challenged or if we need to be supportive. Sometimes we think we need to be challenged, and actually it's a moment where we need to be supported. Other times we think we need support. Oh, let me get my cup of coffee and my blanket and wrap up. Maybe challenge and stick with what you're going through and go through it. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. A teacher helps us find that. And every teacher is going to be different in that. Some are going to be all loving kindness. Some are going to be all, the wrathful Buddha. Most teachers are a combination of those. All teachers probably are. But there are 5 qualities, according to the Buddha, that make up a Kalyana Mitta. And these are 5 qualities you should look for. And I'll just go through these 5 qualities right now. So quality number 1 of a spiritual guide, of a spiritual teacher, is that they are lovable. That there's something about them where you kind of fall in love spiritually. It's like, it's like there's something in them that is like, oh my gosh, and you're attracted to that. It might be coming through a personality, but really it's not personal. When we're inspired by a teacher and maybe even drawn to a teacher, what we are seeing in that teacher, manifesting in that teacher, is our own future potential manifesting through them, coming from the future back to meet us in the present and say, come. Oh my God. It's such a beautiful experience. And that's where this first quality comes in. The teacher is lovable. Every teacher has their own style, their own way of being, their own expression of the Dharma, their own manifestation of the Dharma. That might be like an attractor for you, or it may not, and that's fine. But when you are coming into contact with teachers, the first quality that is required for this relationship to be effective is that the teacher is lovable. Number one. And I'm sure it's not everybody here, but certainly the majority of people here. I don't know about Olivia, but she can probably relate to this. The majority of people here can relate to what I'm saying, that you follow somebody or you went to the retreat for some reason, or something about them. And especially if you went back and went back to practice with that teacher, something about them that just is lovable. Quality number one. Quality number two is that they are, that teacher, he or she, them or they, that teacher is worthy of love. Okay, this is important because many teachers are lovable. It does happen from time to time that a teacher is lovable, and there are certain human shortcomings of that teacher that don't necessarily warrant or are not worthy of being loved. In other words, they maybe their ethical lines are not so clear. And I mean, that's basically what it means. To be worthy of being loved, for a teacher to be worthy of being loved means that they have very clear ethical boundaries and they respect those above and beyond everything else. Why? Because a teacher is helping or taking on a certain amount of karma with the student. That is sacred. That is sacred. So there needs to be ethical lines. Now, in our human development, in our social development, in the evolution of societies, we are constantly redefining ethics, and that is a good thing. That's all evolution. But basically speaking, ethics in Buddhism is not to harm another person, not to harm yourself with your actions or with your words. Doesn't mean a challenging teacher might say something that hurts your feelings, hits a button, hurts the feelings. That doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that in their words and in their actions, they're not going to do things that are destructive. That makes sense. That they have clear ethical boundaries. Monks and nuns respect the precepts. They, there's no sex, no killing, no all this stuff. It's really, really strict. Many lay people with meditation teachers also respect these precepts, but there's far fewer rules that they follow. So there's a little bit more openness, a little bit more freedom. So that just all has to be put into the evolutionary understanding of what we're doing in this teacher-student relationship. But the fundamental principle that the Buddha laid down is, number one, that the first quality is that the teacher is lovable. Second quality is that the teacher is worthy of that love. Okay? Makes sense. Very logical. Quality number three of a teacher, a spiritual teacher, a meditation teacher, or a Kalyanamitta, spiritual guide, is that they are deeply experienced in both theory and practice. That they have a deep, deep understanding of theory, and they have a deep, deep understanding of practice. Deep is a relative, obviously that's a relative term, but it's very specific in Buddhism. I mean, in Vipassana meditation, that a teacher is somebody that actually should have already kind of passed through that fourth stage of insight knowledge, through the mature stage of the fourth stage of insight knowledge. Once a person gets through that stage, then they're kind of clear. The way forward is clear. There's no little traps or side dead ends or places that they can get, that the ego can latch on to. That would be the practice. That would be the first depth of level. Of course, if they're more experienced than that, it's wonderful. But then having a certain amount of theoretical understanding of the Buddha, of the Dhamma, excuse me. They've studied not just books that are commentaries, but they've studied the original texts to a certain extent, or at the very least, they've listened to hundreds of hours of Dharma talks, and while they're practicing and meditating, and the theory and the practice actually connect. So third quality of a meditation teacher, a Buddhist teacher, or a Dharma teacher is that they are deeply experienced in both practice and theory. Fourth quality of a meditation teacher, fourth quality of a Dharma teacher is that they can say what is difficult to say. They have the ability to articulate, to say in a very clear, straightforward way what is difficult to say. This has two meanings. The first meanings is that they can take the profound Dharma and translate it to the level of development that the person's at. They can, it's really like a translation. There's just these, Nibbana. Okay, what the hell is Nibbana? They're able to kind of, because of the experience of that, they're able to translate it to the listener. The three universal characteristics, because of their deep experience in that, they're able to translate it. So the first meaning of they can say what is difficult to say is that they can take profound truths and speak about it in a way that is accessible. Yeah, they can say what is difficult to say. There's a second meaning to this, maybe even a more important meaning, equally important, is that they can put their finger on our shortcomings, that they are a living reflection in one way or another. It might be in a more challenging way. It might be in a more supportive way, but they can reflect back to us where we are stuck. They can reflect back to us where we are fooling ourselves. They can reflect back to us where we are identified, that they're able to say what is difficult to hear. And my friends tell me I'm being a jerk. What do they know? Whatever, you hear that. But a teacher has a special position in our life. When they say, hey, you're being a jerk, for example, it's like, oh, all right, so this is a moment of truth. Either I lower them as a teacher and I keep my jerkiness, or I let in what they say and I start to examine my behavior. For example. So they can reflect truths that are hard for us to hear. And you're bypassing here or whatever, and or they can translate profound Dharma in the ways that is accessible. Okay, that's the fourth quality of a meditation teacher. So I'll review them all again. First quality, I'll review these four. The first quality of a meditation teacher is that they're lovable. Second quality of a meditation teacher is that they are worthy of that love because they have ethical boundaries. Third quality of meditation is that they're deeply experienced in both practice and theory. The fourth quality of a meditation teacher is that they can say what is difficult to say, meaning they can translate profound Dharma in a way that's accessible, or they can reflect to us that are a truth that is hard for us to hear. Fifth quality of a meditation teacher, of a Dharma teacher, is that they only offer the Dharma, that they only teach, that they only guide, that they only share for the benefit of the listener, not for the benefit of themselves. Think of the Buddha. He did all this. If you know any of the stories of the Buddha, amazing what he was doing. It's incredible. 2,500 years later, look at it. It's the wheel of the Dharma is still rolling. He didn't do that for himself. He was so purified, he didn't care. So a mature, worthy meditation teacher will have that fifth quality, where they offer openly and usually tirelessly. To be quite fair, all the Dharma teachers I know, they're always ready to talk Dharma, to share, even when they're running out of energy. They just keep going. But they do it for the benefit of the listener. They do it for the benefit of the practitioner. They do it for the benefit in the teacher-student relationship of the student. Define that relationship however you want to. These are 5 qualities of a meditation teacher: that they're lovable, that they're worthy of love, that they're deeply experienced in practice and theory, that they can say profound truths. They can say what is difficult to hear. They can say what is difficult to say, and they can say what is difficult to hear. And the fifth one is that they only offer the teachings for the benefit of the listener, for the receiver. And it is said, if you find a teacher that has these 5 qualities, you would be good to stay with that teacher. You will do good to stay with that teacher. Even if, and this is what my teacher Upandita used to say, because in Burma they have this kind of really strict style of Buddhism. They would say, even if the teacher throws you out of the monastery, kicks you out, you come back, you make amends, and you stay with that teacher. Because if they have those 5 qualities, you will benefit. Your karma will be transformed, without a doubt. Okay? So that's a very classic way to see it. Now, Olivia, that's all the time we have for that today. If you're listening, if you're with us today, Olivia, that's all the time we have for that today. There is much, much more. We could upgrade this in a modern context. We could upgrade this in a postmodern context. We could upgrade this in a integral context. But for now, even if you upgrade it to modern, postmodern, integral, that foundation is the same. It doesn't change. It just complexifies. Okay? So why don't we do this? Why don't we meditate like this today? Think for a moment of a teacher who's lovable, that you've met in your life that is lovable. They might have human shortcomings. I mean, we all do, whatever. But there's something about them that's lovable and that they're worthy of that love. If a teacher doesn't pop to your mind, it could be a school teacher that, I had lots when I was a kid. Yeah. If that doesn't pop into your mind, it could be a relative, a grandparent, uncle. It could be an older brother or sister. If that doesn't jump into your mind, a friend, somebody who they help you. They help you. And they possess this quality of lovability and worthiness of that lovability, of your love, of our love. And let's just take a moment, sit quietly, reflect on that. And as we bring that person into our mind, as we bring that person into our hearts, connecting with the lovable quality and even their worthiness, just notice how that experience impacts you. And maybe take a moment and reflect on the benefit of that person in your life. And now let's take a moment of reflection on appreciation, the appreciation that you have, that we have for those people who have entered our life, have helped us along the path in one way or the other. And that in one sense, they are kind of becoming internalized. And now let's radiate a little metta towards that person. May this person, he, she, name whatever you want, may they be free from physical harm. May they be free from mental suffering. And may they be well and happy. This person might be living, this person might have already passed away. Nonetheless, let's rest radiating metta for another minute with this Kalyanamitta, this spiritual friend. And now, with one internal bow of gratitude, release the image of this person and shifting into Vipassana, shifting into mindful observation of the breath, the body, feelings, sensations, experiences at your sense doors, and the mind. Being mindful with each breath and each moment by moment, breath by breath. Bring your mindfulness back to the breath. Feel the breath. Bring the mindfulness back to the body. Feel the body. Bring your mindfulness to the mind and know your mental state. Feeling the space on the inside. And as you slowly open your eyes coming out of the meditation, feel the space on the outside. Okay, so before we go to the questions, the Q&A, I'll just make a couple of announcements. Today is the last day of our daily meditations. Usually there would be an additional day, but I'm flying tomorrow morning to the States for a retreat. And because it's August already, we decided that we'll just finish off today. George made that decision. So thank you for being with me this week. I'll be back in October, so we'll have a chance to connect again then. As I mentioned before, these sessions are offered open-handedly and for free. The daily meditation meetings are for free, and if you would like to contribute to these sessions happening, because they don't happen for free, it takes some resources to make this happen. Then I just put the link for the donation button in the chat. And remember this wheel of awesomeness, this wheel of healthy wheel, where we support the Dharma supports us, and the Dharma supports us, and in turn, we support the Dharma. And remember, the greatest form of dana, of generosity, is whatever level of awakening you have in yourself, offering that to others, sharing that with others in an open-handed way. That's the greatest form of dana. It's a spiritual generosity, but in a material sense, we also have financial support. Okay, and yeah, this will be my last teaching today until October. And remember, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm under Miles Kessler on both of those sites, and I post fairly regularly there, and it's often Dharma stuff. So please follow me there. Also, I have in September, I believe. Let me just take a quick check. In September, I'm going to be leading a workshop on Buddhist psychology. And it's kind of an interactive workshop. So not just theory, but a little bit of practice as well. So if you're interested in joining that, you can just go over to my website. It's theintegraldojo.com. I put the link there as well. All right. Now to our Q&A. So there were some questions left over from yesterday and from Monday, which I'll go ahead and I'll start answering them. But if somebody has a question that you want to answer today, so just please put it in the chat and write question beforehand. So Adit had asked both Monday and yesterday. She's been working with the Heart Sutra, and the Heart Sutra is the kind of the core sutra from Mahayana Buddhism. In Zen, you'll hear the Heart Sutra a lot. In Vipassana circles, you won't hear it so much because a question about the month of August. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So the month of August, the daily meditations are stopped, as I understand. And if you have a question about that, I can't answer it. But I think if you go to the questions, the question in the forum in the students members portal, you'll be able to ask that question, and George or Faith will probably answer you right away. Okay, so Adit, sorry about that. So the Heart Sutra, the core line there is form is emptiness and emptiness is form. Now, I'm not a Mahayana practitioner. I have a certain amount, but it's not my field. And I don't want to try to give an answer to this question from that sense. So I'll give an answer that I have, just knowing that there's probably a different, maybe even better answer. So she was chanting the Heart Sutra yesterday, and the phrase "form is emptiness and emptiness is form," which is very popular, is very intriguing to her, but she doesn't understand it well. What does it mean in a nutshell? Well, here's how it would come about in Vipassana, in mindfulness meditation. You'll be observing forms. Forms are the sensations, the body, the boundaries, the feelings, the perception, sounds, sights, and all these are forms. Mental thoughts as well are forms. They're mental formations, and they appear solid. As the eye of insight opens, and as you begin to see anicca, impermanence, those solidity starts to change. As you start to see dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, it starts to break up and dissolve through the progress, until you start to see that third insight knowledge. The third universal characteristic of anatta, non-self. Then you start to have a direct experience of emptiness. Boundaries disappear, thoughts pop away, they dissolve, and you start to feel the emptiness of things. Our usual progression is we go from formness to emptiness, and there's this kind of move, and then we start to taste emptiness more and more. Then further practice, a more mature, more advanced practice, is not seeing the emptiness in form, but starting to see the form in emptiness. It's a whole nother phase of practice, whole nother process. It could take some time. It could take some years, in fact, to integrate that, to where even in the most solid objects, you start to experience the emptiness. Even in the most solid experiences, my body, my breath, my thoughts, you automatically see the emptiness. Now, from that mature perspective, where you went from formness to emptiness, and then from emptiness back to formness, you start to integrate that big N, the experience is literally that. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Before that experience, before that integration happens, it's just words. They're correct words, they're logical words, they're intellectually sound words, but it's not the experience. But those words can lead us forward on the path towards that experience of where form is emptiness and emptiness is form. Okay? All right. I don't see any other questions here, so I'll go on to the next question that came up. From Jane Bennett. She said, let me just check the time here. Yeah. Would you say in the metaphor of the Garden of Eden? So this was on Monday, I believe. I kind of mentioned metaphorically the Garden of Eden as a spiritual absolute. I was talking about absolute. Excuse me. I was talking about absolute and relative. So Jane asked, would you say that the metaphor of the Garden of Eden, that Adam and Eve were in a state of Nibbana before the fall? So it's a good question, and I kind of lined it up that way a little bit. But when we use religious metaphors from different religious traditions, they don't always point to the same direction. So I'm not so sure if the fathers of Abraham was the father of Abraham, the fathers of the Judeo-Christian traditions had the experience of Nibbana as the same experience of the Garden of Eden. This was not just mythology. It's clearly mythology, but this mythology came from somewhere. It came from some deep, profound spiritual realization. Was that spiritual realization Nibbana? Possibly. But there's a few different absolutes. When we talk about absolute truth, Nibbana is one of them, and that's absolute nothingness. And absolute nothingness. There's nothing in Nibbana. There's no mind. There's no body. There's no consciousness. It all blips out of existence, and then you blip back into existence. And between the blips, it might be a second, it might be 10 minutes, it might be an hour, it might be a day. Some master yogis can do that for 7 days. They blip out, they blip back in. And between the blips, there's nothing. It's like a blink of an eye. You blipped out, you blink back in, you look at your clock. Wow, some time had passed. And the experience is quite unique and extraordinary. So now, was that what the Judeo-Christian fathers and mothers were referring to as Nibbana? I don't know, because in the Mahayana tradition or in the Hindu traditions, they didn't speak about Nibbana, but rather Nirvana. And Nirvana is different. It's not a profound state of non-self. It's a profound state of non-duality, of oneness, which is a field of consciousness, not where consciousness disappears, but where the self disappears and the field of consciousness is one. Was that the Garden of Eden? Perhaps. Could have been one of those two. I don't know. We're getting a little bit theological here, but what I would say, just to point back, if we're talking about the absolute, it doesn't matter which one it was, because it's the absolute. Absolute is always an experience of awakening, and when that becomes to be manifest, it's an expression of awakening. Okay. Last question, since nobody else is writing a question. Actually, I got one more question here. I have two more here, but I can answer them both if I need to. So Kevin G. You know what, Kevin? You asked the question before. I'm going to go ahead and answer your question. You asked on Monday. You were about my last time that I was teaching for Sangha Live. I taught the theme was the Four Noble Practices. The first practice is a noble practice of letting come, letting go, letting be, and letting grow. And we didn't get to that last day because I had emergency thing at the school that I had to go to. So you were asking, Miles, was let it grow about, what was let it grow about when we missed it on the last Friday session that I taught? Okay. So let it grow is basically about the fourth noble truth. And the fourth noble truth is the truth of the path, that there is a path of development that leads to the experience of, that leads to the experience of liberation and the eradication of suffering. Truth of suffering, truth of the cause of suffering, truth of cessation, stopping the suffering, truth of the path that leads to the end. Let it grow is our development along that path. We grow along that path. That's what let it grow refers to. Okay, and in the terms of the Four Noble Practice, it's the noble practice of development. Okay, noble practice of acceptance, noble practice of letting go, relinquishment, noble practice of realization, and the noble practice of development. That was the fourth one. Balloons, wonderful. Heidi had a question. Let's see if I can do both these questions because Jonathan just came with the question. Heidi, if you're here, the go-to method these days for self-regulation is to return to the body, sensory information to assist grounding when dysregulated. So if we're having a state of dysregulation, we ground it in the body somehow. Yes, that is the go-to method. At these times, I find sensory information too overwhelming. Okay, needs to be respected. From a Buddhist point of view, what other options are there that aren't so sensory heavy to assist getting the body and mind into a more regulated state? Well, I mean, from a Buddhist perspective, it's only the body and the mind. Whatever you're doing to become more regulated, to help with regulation, I should say, it's either going to be something in the body or something in the mind. Now, the sensory overload is something that needs to be respected. But remember, when we anchor in the body, for example, feel your feet on the floor. Let's just do that right now, everybody. Feel your feet on the floor. If dysregulated, we're kind of discombobulated. We're kind of like scattered a bit. If we can just bring everything to only the feet on the floor. Now, I don't know if you meant the sensory overload of the feet, the senses of the feet on the floor was overwhelming, or if you meant all the senses are overwhelming. I think you meant all the senses are overwhelming. I could be wrong. But if you're able to just keep the attention on one sensation or one location, the feet on the floor, for example, or the breath in the belly, and just simplify it, that could help with regulation. And if that's overwhelming, you could do something like loving kindness. I mean, you could also pay attention to thoughts and stuff like that. But I think in dysregulation, it's probably better to do something like loving kindness. But here's the thing with anchoring, either in a physical experience or in something like loving kindness or a mantra, it requires concentration. Now, concentration can actually help us to regulate. We bring the mind together, and it helps to regulate everything together. But if the dysregulation was caused by an obsessive focusing or obsessive thoughts or then concentration is already happening. So in that situation, you got to let the steam off. You've got to let the concentration go. So I would say go for a walk or clean the kitchen or something, whatever. Get an activity going that just breaks the concentration. This is a very general answer, and I'm not so sure it's going to get to what you were talking about, but with the time we have, I'm going to leave it at that, and yeah, I hope it's helpful. It's 10 o'clock. Let's see what Jonathan's question was. Oh. Wow, what a question, Jonathan. All right, we're going to go over a few minutes here. So if anybody needs to leave, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it. And I'll take a couple of minutes for Jonathan's question and answer it the best I can. Remember, I'm not a mental health professional, so I'll just give it from a meditation point of view. Jonathan asks, for those who experience complex trauma, PTSD, where they can dissociate during meditation and often feel emotionally overwhelmed and dysregulation in daily life. This is kind of related. Any tips on approaches to meditate and finding a teacher? Well, those are two different questions. Well, I mean, well, finding a teacher first, I would say if you find a teacher that has a pretty decent understanding of the therapeutic process and how it's different, that's kind of important, because sometimes those two, meditation and therapy, can get conflated, and that's not necessarily going to be helpful. So finding a teacher, either find somebody they know their stuff in meditation, and they know when it's actually psychological or therapeutic issue, and they can guide you, direct you accordingly. So that would be that part. Any tips on approaches in meditation? It's kind of the same thing that I answered before with Heidi. If meditation is re-triggering old traumas, it can be very helpful, but at a certain point, you got to stop meditating. How it can be helpful in understanding how your awareness leads you to the suppression barriers and all of the stressor around that, and the discomfort and the unpleasantness around that. And if you keep concentrating, go through that, then you can be re-traumatized in a way. It can just kind of come up, and you're back in Vietnam, so to speak, on the meditation cushion. Not necessarily a helpful thing. So I would say a lot of caution. If you practice meditation cautiously, it can be super helpful in healing and reintegration. Super helpful. But if you're doing hardcore deep concentration meditation, either it's going to be a bypass and that stuff won't get touched, or it can open that stuff up. It can, what did you say? It can reactivate it. So knowing where that line is, and knowing requires mindfulness. Knowing the limit of it requires mindfulness, and knowing when to back off requires mindfulness. So that's where meditation is very helpful. And then I would say having some type of therapeutic process with a professional, but there's a lot you can do by yourself, but professionally guided, professionally advised. Okay. And just because of time, I'm going to keep it short. Well, for two reasons, I'm going to keep it short. I'm not a mental health professional. Number one. Number two, yeah, I think that's kind of the most I could say about that today. Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, Adit. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. This is the last day of this week's daily meditations. I hope that this teaching on the qualities of a meditation teacher will help you in one way or another. And I hope that this week's practice on cutting through to ultimate reality will both inspire, maybe challenge, but for sure support you in your practice. And may it lead you forward, forever and always forward on your path of meditation. Thank you, everybody.